with the arc in space, I think we're seeing the Fourth Doctor more in the element that would define his tenure as Doctor Who, in that he would, he's going to leave behind the unit era, and he's going to be constantly going to new worlds and new civilizations in deep space and time and whatnot. And of course, coming to Earth, but a lot of space adventures. And right off the bat, in his second adventure for him, we go to, which is, again, similar to Patrick Troughton's era, what he would do. And of course, the standard of Space Station in Trouble. So Ark in Space, it could have been called Space Station in Trouble. So the setup simply is that there's this space station that has a bunch of people cryogenically frozen because something terrible has happened to the Earth and it's no longer inhabitable. So a select few were gathered to go into the deep sleep, waiting for the Earth to return to an environment that humans can exist on, and so they float around in space all that time. Unfortunately, a bug, a space bug, flying along in space, came upon the space station, broke in, and feasted upon one of the sleeping astronauts, I guess, or what have you. And we see that from the eye view of said space bug, but we don't quite know what we're seeing there. But later on, this unravels what happened. And so the space station itself is sort of in a dormant state, just barely running, and is all dark and everything. And then the TARDIS arrives, and here comes the Doctor, Harry, and Sarah. And we learn that, they weren't meant to go there, but Harry fumbled around with the TARDIS controls, and they were supposed to just go to the moon and back, but they ended up going into the far distant future and arrived on, the Ark in Space. So there's the air of mystery, there's a little mood to it. But also the comical antics, mostly between the Doctor and Harry, which they perform very well. And there's a lot of it's interesting. Of course, we know now that Tom Baker says his approach to Doctor Who was just to play himself, which he did. So it's like he gets into the role very quickly, and it's like he's been doing it for years, which I guess, yes, all his life he's been doing it. So, but the back and forth between them and Harry being completely lost and just sort of, I don't know what this is and all that, it just works. And it just seems to click very quickly and all of that. And so immediately they're separated from Sarah, who gets in trouble, and they don't understand what's going on. But as they keep going forward, they're activating all kinds of things. A security system starts zapping Harry and the Doctor, and it's rather comical how they deal with it. Sarah, meanwhile, gets locked into this room and eventually teleported into the chamber of the cryogenically frozen people. And so now she's stuck in there, and they have to get her out. Eventually, they do wake up Vira, a woman there, who explains what they're there for and all that. And meanwhile, their leader, jokingly called Noah, gets up, and he's not happy to see them there at all, and he's a bit of a bigot. He said, "We're the elite. We were selected. We don't want any of this riffraff around." So, which is interesting, because I'd always kind of forgot that, because later on in the next adventure with the Sontaran and everything, there's these other humans, and it's the idea that there were other people who survived, but they just weren't the special people, and they had moved on and colonized other planets or what have you, and weren't a part of the Earth, whereas this group was supposed to go back to Earth and make something of it. And so that kind of fills that in, I suppose, somewhat between the episodes. As to who these people were. But anyway, so they discover one of their guys is missing. He's the one who got eaten by the space bug. They find the corpse of the space bug who died after being wounded by the automatic defense system that tried to kill Harry and the Doctor. And it's basically this space wasp that's laying her eggs. And each time she consumes another alien creature, which she also digests their knowledge. And this larvae goes down into the, I guess, I don't know, the engine room or whatever, where their solar-powered elements are, and begins to produce the more larvae down there. Noah goes to investigate and gets some snot on his hand, passes out and wakes up. His entire arm has turned into a giant booger. Actually, it's probably just some, I don't know, packing bubble or what have you. It was painted green or something like that. But it works. It looks good enough. And he's slowly transforming into one of the bug people. And but his human spirit wins out in the end, as he ends up sacrificing himself and the other bug people. Well, the Wirren, as they were called, and all of that. We do get some motive for them, is that they were originally from the Andromeda galaxy, but humans had gone there and destroyed their home and whatnot, and as they floated through space, they figured this was their revenge and their right to take the Earth from the humans and use them as, their larder and all of that, but doesn't quite work out. And so, it's a great atmospheric adventure, and it works out, and the Doctor is excellent, and they work with one another. Oddly enough, despite recent persons in charge of Doctor Who today saying that the old series was sexist and misogynist, it is mentioned within this old episode that in the future, the Prime Minister of Earth, not just of Britain, but the entire planet, was a woman. They even make mention of this, where Harry says, "Gee, Sarah, that ought to give your feminist, vibes a thrill," or what have you, and just, oh yeah, so, but there it is, and so there's also a scene. Well, what wouldn't be allowed today, I imagine, is Sarah volunteers to drag a cable through the air-conditioned vent, if you will. And at one point she gets stuck, and the Doctor, in order to give her the initiative to keep going, starts taunting her and making fun of her and whatnot, and she gets so angry she comes forward. And he says, "Well, I had to do that to piss you off." But today it would only be seen as him being cruel and demeaning to a woman, and that's it. Despite its more depth and development of the relationship between the two, and what he felt he had to do to get her through, so that they could survive. Also of note is there is a not just that Noah sacrifices himself, but one of the other crewmen does, and it's interesting because, I'm just going to mention it. The Timeless Child has come and gone, and there's a scene in which the Doctor's about to sacrifice herself, but then an old man shows up and says, "I'll do it," and the Doctor just runs away like a coward and escapes. And here the Doctor is ready to sacrifice himself to save everyone at their ultimate plan to send the Wirren in the space shuttle off out of the space station. But the I forget his name now, the tech guy, the big hero, I forget his name. But he says, "No, Doctor, you're not staying behind. This is my job." And rather than the Doctor saying, "Okay, buddy," and run away, the guy knocks him out and puts him to safety, and then he takes the sacrifice. So that's how you do that. But too lazy and too busy with your little sermons and messages in current Doctor Who forgot to write in a scenario where your Doctor doesn't come off looking like a coward. But anyway, so yeah, old Doctor Who is much better. And so of course, they're able to save the rest of humanity that's still in the deep freeze, and off they go. But they've discovered there's a bit of a problem. They've lost their spaceship, so they're going to need to use the teleport system to beam down to the Earth. And there's something a little off with it, so the Doctor and Harry and Sarah volunteer to go check it out. So, of course, that will lead to the next episode where the Sontaran, well, not the same Sontarans, but a new, because they're clones, so it doesn't matter, will make his appearance. I was going to say their appearance, but there's only one, you know. But anyway, yeah, another run-in with a Sontaran in the next episode of the Sontaran Experiment. This is one of the more episodes, because when I first began to watch Doctor Who when I was, I don't know, 11 or 12, and this is one of the ones that I more remember than Robot in little bits and pieces, but primarily because I didn't see the first episode of Robot, so at the time I knew nothing of the other Doctors. I didn't know that the Doctor was even an alien. I didn't really know that, even though there's signs here and there of you know, the two hearts and whatnot, and there's a lot of details I would forget. And over the time, until the end of Tom Baker's run, when there was all these stories about, you know, Peter Davison was going to replace him, I was like, what, Tristan? You know? And didn't know about all that. The only one I'd seen regenerate was Romana. And didn't understand that, even though rewatching it, it's mentioned several times. You actually see the other Doctors, as they always do in these Doctor Who stories. You see the past Doctors and all that. But this one stuck with me more. And at the time, in my child eyes, I thought this was, wow, what an elaborate set they built for this space station. Of course, well, not so much, but it works for what it is. And of course, it's that time-held ability that if you do it right, and this particular crew working on Doctor Who did with very little budget and whatnot, and you will see this repeated again and again as they go, but they do it so well with lighting and camera angles and whatnot. So it's obviously the same little walkway that they set up to make it look like you're seeing outer space through the windows and whatnot. And to make it look, oh, you're going a long distance, you're walking around this giant circle of this space station, but it's just the same little piece that they built. But all it takes is the ability to understand your photography and whatnot, and they got it down pat. And they do that again. They will do this repeatedly, most notably in probably the greatest ever episode we will get to, our greatest ever Doctor Who adventure. And yet it's so simplistic and yet brilliant. So, Ark in Space, a classic Doctor Who episode, if ever there was one, and of course the standard trope of the space station in trouble, and it certainly was, but fortunately the Doctor showed up and saved it. I didn't go through every detail because I'm not going to spoil everything. I do encourage you to check out Ark in Space. Thank you for watching and listening. Say, why not like and subscribe, and check out that link description below. That'll take you to my many stores that have plenty of goodies for you. Most notably, my comic book, Night Night, over at IndiePlanet.com. You can also catch my podcast, Mr Nailsin Show, on RadioMisfits.com, and you can also watch these videos over at BitChute. That's the Mr Nailsin channel on BitChute.com.